He who gives himself in excess loses respect. He who learns to remain silent and preserve himself discovers that true power does not lie in the love granted, but in the mystery it imposes. Respect isn't begged for. Respect is imposed. This is the first truth you must face if you want to understand the silent game that governs all relationships, even the most intimate. From Machiavelli to the present day, the lesson remains the same. Those who seek constant approval become hostages. Those who offer everything without measure become disposable. Those who chase too much lose the value they could have maintained in silence. Women's respect, like anyone's respect, is not born from romantic declarations, exaggerated gestures, or a willingness to please at all costs. It stems from something much colder, calculated, and uncomfortable: the attitude of someone who doesn't need it. Think about how many times you've tried to be overly available, ready to answer messages, solve problems, anticipate desires. How many times have you believed that by demonstrating more dedication, you'd gain more respect? And yet, instead of being valued for your dedication, the effect was often the opposite. The more you gave, the less you seemed to be recognized. This doesn't happen out of cruelty or ingratitude, but because of a natural law of human desire that Machiavelli understood perfectly. What is abundant loses value. What is rare becomes precious. Machiavelli's book, The Prince, was written to instruct rulers on how to maintain power amid instability. But its laws can also be applied to personal and romantic relationships. If a prince who strives to be loved by all ends up being despised, the same happens to a man who constantly tries to be agreeable. When you appear too willing, you convey weakness. And weakness in the game of desire is a confession no one forgives. An everyday example: imagine a relationship in which a man is constantly explaining himself, justifying every move, responding immediately to every message, giving in to every demand. At first, it may seem like attention and affection, but over time, it becomes predictable. He becomes not a partner, but a servant. And servants can be used, but never respected. Now compare that to someone who, faced with an unfair accusation, doesn't rush to explain himself. Instead, he simply stares silently, takes a deep breath, and calmly responds, "You have a right to think that way." Suddenly, the accuser loses ground, feels the weight of the silence, and is forced to rethink his words. What happened here was no coincidence, but the application of a law of power. Controlled silence is worth more than 1,000 justifications. Machiavelli said that men judge more with their eyes than with their hearts. And what does this mean in the realm of seduction? That it's not just how you feel that matters, but above all how you present yourself. A man who displays insecurity when trying to please conveys a fragile image, even if he has good intentions. One who maintains a firm posture, even amidst tension, conveys strength, and strength is what generates respect. Ask yourself, in how many situations have you lost respect because you didn't know how to wait? Because you talked too much, defended yourself too much, or seemed too approachable? How many times would silence have been your best weapon, but you chose to justify yourself? This reflection is painful but necessary, because it's in discomfort that you begin to see where you've wasted power without realizing it. An ancient story illustrates this clearly. An ambassador was once publicly accused of betraying the interests of his own kingdom. Everyone expected him to react with fiery speeches, denying the accusations. Instead, he simply smiled slightly and said, "Curious to hear that from you." Nothing more. The effect was devastating. The accuser, who expected a reaction, became lost in his own contradictions. The ambassador, with few words and much silence, demonstrated more strength than any speech could have. This scene, though distant, resonates in the present. In any relationship, those who talk too much lose. Those who speak little and precisely win. In relationships with women, this translates even more directly. A man who constantly tries to explain his worth, who chases excessively, who strives to justify his intentions, loses magnetism. A man who maintains mystery, who doesn't give away all the answers, who is calm under pressure, inspires curiosity and respect. Because deep down, human desire isn't fueled by clarity, but by doubt. And it's doubt that keeps someone in our minds longer. Now ask yourself, are you willing to be seen as cold, distant, or even arrogant at times, just to preserve your aura of respect? Are you willing to endure the discomfort of not justifying yourself, of not giving in, of not being constantly available? You are. That's why few are truly respected. The price of respect is giving up the desire to please. Machiavelli reminded us that men are ungrateful, fickle, and fake. And if you rely solely on their goodwill, you become vulnerable. Apply this to the world of relationships. If you expect respect simply for being kind, for being attentive, for giving too much of yourself, you will end up disappointed. Respect is born not from excessive kindness, but from the ability to set limits. A man without limits is not admired, he is used. A man who knows how to say no is the one who remains in memory. And isn't this exactly what we see every day? The friend who never says no ends up being exploited. The colleague who always covers for others at work never gets recognized. The partner who never sets boundaries ends up being the least respected in the relationship. What do all these cases have in common? The illusion that pleasing others is synonymous with respect. But respect isn't bought with concessions. Respect is earned with determination. Apply this to your life. The next time you feel the temptation to explain yourself, stop, breathe. Ask yourself, does this explanation make me stronger or weaker? If the answer is weaker, remain silent. The next time someone demands your immediate presence, ask yourself, by giving in now, do I gain or lose value? If the answer is I lose, wait. With each choice of silence, absence, or boundaries, you are training your mind to command respect. And this training, repeated, transforms into posture. Women's respect, like anyone else's, isn't given out of pity, but earned through posture. It's not about being cruel, but about being firm. It's not about being insensitive, but about being enigmatic. It's not about withholding affection, but about denying predictability. And when you take this place, you discover you don't need to chase respect. It will come to you, silent and inevitable, because your posture demands it. Everything rare arouses fascination. Everything abundant sooner or later loses value. This is one of the oldest laws of human nature, and one of the cruelest for those who believe that being always available is synonymous with respect. Machiavelli, in The Prince, showed that even the most beloved ruler becomes contemptible when he allows himself to be seen too much, when he offers every concession, when he becomes a common figure. Constant presence destroys the aura of power. The same happens in the realm of seduction. If you never leave, if you never refuse, if you never impose distance, you cease to be desired and become consumed. Think of desire as a flame. If you throw too much wood at once, the fire burns out quickly and goes out. If you throw too little wood and leave room for air, the fire burns all night. Scarcity works the same way. By showing up less, you prolong the flame. By giving too much, you extinguish it. And yet, most men believe that the more present they are, the more respect they will earn. It's the opposite. It's precisely calculated absence that creates fascination. Everyday stories reveal this dynamic. A man who responds within seconds to every message, who is available at any time of day, who is always ready to solve problems, may even be valued for a time. But inevitably, predictability turns him into part of the scenery, like an ever-present piece of furniture. Now compare that with someone who takes a long time, who sometimes doesn't respond, who appears and disappears at unexpected moments. This person is not forgotten. His absence creates space for questions, and questions create attachment. And if you still doubt, look at yourself. How many times have you obsessed over someone who seemed indifferent? How many times have you thought more about that person who wasn't always available, who left unanswered messages, who only showed up when they wanted to? Scarcity creates value because it forces us to strive, and human beings value what they have to earn more than what is handed to them on a silver platter. Machiavelli would say that a wise ruler should not reveal himself to everyone at all times. He should be seen rarely, so that each appearance is marked by impact. The same goes for those who desire respect in relationships. The man who makes himself scarce creates expectations around himself. When he appears, his presence carries weight. When he speaks, his words echo. When he gives, the gesture is remembered. And that is why scarcity is so powerful. It transforms the common into the rare, and the rare into the unforgettable. But do you have the courage to be scarce? Can you withstand the accusation of coldness, disinterest, or arrogance? Can you resist the temptation to be always available, always ready, always present? This is the test that separates those who seek approval from those who earn respect. Scarcity demands discipline. It demands courage to disappear when instinct tells you to pursue it. It demands strength to remain silent when everything within you begs for an answer. A real-life case illustrates this law well. A man, in love, dedicated all his time to the woman he desired. He was always available, dropped commitments to see her, and made a point of showing constant interest. The result? She began to see him as taken for granted, predictable, almost invisible. His interest waned, until, at a certain point, he decided to change. He stopped responding immediately, stopped being constantly available, and prioritized other areas of his life. Little by little, she began to seek him out. to miss his attention, to value what had previously been ignored. Scarcity transformed the banal into something precious. Have you ever wondered how many times you've lost value simply by always being there? How many opportunities for respect have you wasted by not knowing how to say no? How many times have you been forgotten precisely because you've never been absent? The world doesn't reward absolute availability. The world respects what is rare. But be careful. Scarcity is not indifference. It's not about abandoning, completely ignoring, or disappearing for no reason. It's about controlling the flow, regulating presence, creating contrast. Just as silence only has power because it interrupts speech, absence only has value because it contrasts with presence. Scarcity isn't about denying everything. It's about knowing how to deny at the right moment. It's about appearing less to be remembered more. In practical terms, apply this law to your daily life. If someone asks you for something you can't or won't offer, learn to refuse. If they expect an immediate response, wait a little longer. If they believe you'll always be available, break that pattern. Little by little, your absence will begin to weigh more heavily than your constant presence did, and this weight will transform into respect. Machiavelli demonstrated that a ruler who is always accessible ends up being treated as an equal, and equals do not inspire obedience. Likewise, a man who never imposes barriers ends up being treated as a resource, not a partner. And a resource can be used but not respected. The scarce partner, who offers value in measured doses, is seen as essential. Imagine a scene. Two men competing for the same woman's attention. The first sends constant messages, is always available, offers everything without measure. The second responds calmly, appears occasionally, and maintains an aura of mystery. Which of them will occupy more space in her mind? The one who gives too much of himself, or the one who offers only fragments? The human heart cannot resist scarcity. It transforms it into obsession. This is precisely why people so often despise what they already have and desire what they cannot have. It is not the quality itself, but the lack that creates value. Respect is born from the same mechanism. When you are always present, you lose your aura. When you are less visible, your every gesture multiplies in impact. This is the cruel mathematics of seduction and power. Silence is the most underrated weapon in existence. It's invisible, yet suffocating. It's empty, yet heavy. It's absence, yet leaves deeper marks than any words. In the world of human relationships, where everyone rushes to speak, explain, and justify themselves, those who choose to remain silent immediately become enigmatic. An enigma is always respected more than transparency. Machiavelli, in his analysis of human nature, made it clear that it is not the content of truth that governs men, but perception. Silence, in this sense, is the tool that shapes perceptions effortlessly. It doesn't explain. It doesn't defend itself. It doesn't open the door to attack. It simply exists, and its very existence is already destabilizing. In a society that confuses sincerity with exposure, choosing silence is almost an act of rebellion. It's refusing to participate in the game of haste, where the first to respond wins. It's saying, without words, I don't need to play on your turf. You can come to mine. This reversal of terrain is devastating. Those who accuse expect a defense. Those who provoke expect a reaction. Those who demand an explanation. And when none of these things happen, when the response is a calculated emptiness, the other person is lost, because there's no way to fight against what isn't revealed. But have you ever experienced the discomfort of being silenced in front of a crowd demanding an explanation? Can you remember a time when you chose not to respond and realized the power that generated? Or, conversely, have you ever felt like you lost respect precisely because you talked too much, justified yourself too much, explained yourself to the point where your voice no longer carried weight? Silence, when used well, is not cowardice, but strategy. Imagine a man wrongly accused by his partner in a tense moment. The common reaction would be to rush to explain, prove his innocence, and present arguments. But every argument is a surrender of power because it assumes he needs to convince. Now imagine that, faced with the accusation, he simply stares at it for a few seconds, takes a deep breath, and responds, "Interesting, you think so?" This short, almost neutral sentence, accompanied by silence, transforms the entire scene. The accusation loses impact because it finds no fertile ground. The accuser is forced to rethink what they said. Silence is disarming, not because it is empty, but because it returns to the other the weight of what was said. Have you ever noticed how many arguments aren't really about who's right, but about who loses control first? Have you ever noticed that in fights, the one who shouts the loudest doesn't always win, but rather the one who remains calm and silent until the other person tires of talking? Isn't it precisely this contrast that creates an aura of respect, even when there's no explicit victory? Historical accounts confirm this pattern. In political debates, leaders often win not through the strength of their arguments, but through their ability to remain silent, while their opponent is lost for words. Silence, in this case, becomes a stage. Each word spoken by the other echoes louder because it encounters no resistance, and in the echo, contradictions are revealed that go unnoticed in direct confrontation. Silence reveals more than speech. But what if you applied this to your everyday life? How would you react to the colleague who provokes you in front of everyone at work? To the friend who makes a tasteless joke at your expense? To the partner who, in a moment of anger, accuses you of something unfair? Would you choose immediate defense, surrendering your power, or would you have the courage to remain silent and let the burden fall on them? Silence is also poison when used deliberately. Think of a text exchange. You receive a provocation, and instead of responding immediately, you let time pass. Minutes turn into hours, hours into days. The other person corrodes inside, imagining 1,000 reasons for your absence, creating narratives that may never have existed. What did you do? Nothing. You just let the emptiness work. The silence took charge of planting doubts that no words could have. How many times have you lost your thoughts because someone didn't respond? How many sleepless nights have you had because you didn't receive a message you were expecting? Isn't it frightening to realize that absence weighs more heavily than constant presence? Isn't this precisely what proves that silence is one of the most powerful forms of control? Machiavelli would say that it's not necessary to fight every battle. Victory often lies in refusing to fight on the enemy's side. Silence is this refusal. He says, "I won't play at your pace. You have to deal with the void I've left." This refusal is destructive because human beings cannot tolerate emptiness. Faced with silence, the mind invents, imagines, fantasizes. And these fantasies are almost always worse than reality. But do you have the discipline to maintain silence when everyone demands a response? Can you withstand the burden of being seen as cold, distant, even cruel? Would you accept this image just to maintain your aura of respect? That's the price. And it's precisely because it's so high that so few can afford it. Silence also protects. When you talk too much, you reveal your strategies, your fears, your weaknesses. When you remain silent, you protect your territory. No matter how much they try to extract words, silence is a wall. It protects your value and prevents others from using your own words against you. In a world where everyone exposes themselves, those who preserve themselves become inaccessible, and the inaccessible are always more respected. Have you ever realized that the most enigmatic people you've ever met were precisely those who spoke little? That the leaders who most influenced you weren't those who explained too much, but those who knew how to keep quiet at the right moment? Do you have the courage to become one of them? Mystery has always fascinated men, and even more so women. What is not explained arouses curiosity. What is not revealed provokes anxiety. What is not fully revealed creates an almost irresistible aura. From antiquity to the present day, it is the enigma that keeps interest alive and predictability that kills it. Machiavelli, observing politics, made it clear that rulers who expose themselves too much lose authority. The people, having constant access to the prince, cease to respect him and begin to treat him as an equal. But when the ruler maintains his distance, when his intentions are unclear, when his actions surprise, he is feared and respected. This logic applies not only to the throne, but also to the human heart. Mystery is the key that transforms attraction into respect, desire into obsession, interest into lasting memory. In everyday life, the man who reveals everything about himself quickly becomes predictable. If you tell every detail, expose yourself in every gesture, give yourself over to every word, you quickly burn out. There's no room for imagination, no void to be filled, no doubt that can fuel fascination. On the other hand, someone who keeps part of themselves hidden, who doesn't reveal themselves completely, who maintains silences and blank spaces, creates a magnetism that cannot be artificially manufactured. It's not just what they reveal, but above all, what they hide, that makes them memorable. How many times have you found yourself thinking more about someone who didn't explain their absence than about the one who always justified everything? How many times have you remembered more intensely the one who left you with unanswered questions than the one who gave you all the answers? Isn't it precisely this emptiness, this absence of explanation, that keeps you awake at night, imagining possibilities? Mystery is cruel, but it is effective. It captivates not by what it offers, but by what it retains. Surprising accounts show how mystery can be a weapon even in unlikely situations. A military leader, pressured by his enemies to declare his strategy, simply smiled and said, "You'll find out soon enough." He revealed nothing, offered no guarantees, and gave no explanation. His adversaries spent sleepless nights imagining possibilities, preparing for attacks that never came. The psychological toll was greater than that of any real battle. This same logic is repeated on a smaller scale in human relationships. An unspoken word, an unexpected absence, an enigmatic gesture can corrode someone's mind more than any lengthy explanation. But do you have the courage to maintain the mystery? Can you withstand the pressure of being pressed for answers, of being accused of coldness, of being seen as arrogant? Are you willing to carry this image in exchange for a more respected presence? Mystery requires strength because the human instinct is to justify oneself. The urge to explain, to clarify, to open up is almost irresistible, but it is precisely by resisting this temptation that respect is born. A curious everyday incident clearly demonstrates this. A man always talked too much about his feelings, sharing every thought, revealing every detail. At first it seemed admirable, but it soon became tiresome, predictable, and charmless. When he decided to change his stance and began talking less, to be absent from time, to leave questions unanswered, the effect was immediate. People began to speculate, to comment on his change, to wonder what he was hiding. What was once banal became a mystery, and the mystery brought back the respect he had lost. Curious data from modern psychology confirm this logic. Studies show that uncertainty increases interest. People tend to be more attracted to those who don't reveal everything immediately. Faced with gaps, the brain creates hypotheses, and these hypotheses are often more intense than reality. What is explained kills the imagination. What is hidden feeds it. This is why we so often value more what we cannot have, remember more what has not been resolved, and desire more what remains distant. But what if you could use this to your advantage? What if, instead of giving everything away, you learned to moderate? What if, instead of justifying yourself with every accusation, you let silence work for you? What if, instead of opening up completely, you always left a part untouched, a secret no one could reach? What would happen to your presence, your image, the way others perceive you? Mystery also connects with time. The man who is always present, always accessible, soon loses value. But the one who appears and disappears, who emerges when least expected, who breaks predictability, keeps the flame of interest alive. The unexpected fuels respect. He is like an artist who doesn't perform everywhere, but carefully chooses where and when to take the stage. Every appearance is awaited, every gesture interpreted, every word remembered. Have you ever noticed how historical figures who became legendary were rarely the most accessible? That the most respected leaders were not those who showed themselves excessively, but those who appeared in a calculated way. Napoleon, Elizabeth I, even Machiavelli in his writings all understood that scarcity and mystery create aura. Aura cannot be created with excess, but with control. Aura is not born from absolute transparency, but from the ability to conceal enough to generate fascination. Isn't it strange that in a world that demands ever more exposure, it is precisely those who show themselves the least who are most respected? That, amidst thousands of voices on social media, those who speak little but precisely have the most impact. Excess breeds saturation, scarcity, admiration. The logic is ancient but remains relevant. Mystery has never lost its power. And what will you do from now on? Will you continue to over-explain, give everything away, become predictable? Or will you have the courage to become an enigma, to endure accusations of coldness, to carry the weight of silence? The game of respect is not won by those who speak the most, but by those who reveal the least. Those who accept being an enigma become unforgettable. Those who insist on being transparent dissolve into banality. Emotional discipline is where everyone fails. Machiavelli's book, at its core, shows that a wise ruler is not one who follows only their will or feelings, but one who is able to contain them, use them strategically, and transform emotion into calculation. In human relationships, and especially in relationships between men and women, the same logic applies. Those who explode in anger, who rush to defend themselves, who allow themselves to be carried away by the anxiety to please, end up handing weapons to the other without realizing it. Respect is born of imperturbable calm, of a cool demeanor that resists provocations, of control over one's own impetus. It is precisely this discipline that transforms an ordinary man into someone unforgettable. But this discipline isn't natural. The body demands a reaction. The heart races. The mouth wants to respond. The mind searches for justification. And it's at that moment, precisely at the point where everything inside you screams for self-defense, that the choice must be made. Those who give in to instinct lose authority. Those who endure discomfort and remain silent or respond with cold calm gain ground. The difference between the two lies in a few seconds of self-control, but this detail defines who will be respected and who will be forgotten. An everyday story can illustrate. In a couple's argument, the partner accuses the man of not caring. He, overcome with anxiety to prove his worth, begins listing gestures, memories, and signs of affection. But each justification sounds like a confession of weakness. She feels she's hit a nerve. Now imagine the same man facing the same accusation. He takes a deep breath, holds back the urge to respond, lets the silence weigh heavily for a few seconds, and simply says, "Interesting you think so." The sentence doesn't defend itself, doesn't explain itself, doesn't attempt to convince. It simply shifts the weight back onto the other person. At that moment, the accusation loses strength because it finds no support. The calculated silence combined with a minimal response was worth more than any speech. But could you act this way under pressure? Have you ever found yourself in situations where you lost control and later regretted it? How many times have you said more than you should have, revealed insecurities, let out emotions that were used against you? And if you had taken a few more seconds to breathe, maintained your composure, wouldn't the outcome have been completely different? Machiavelli said that men are not good by nature, but guided by self-interest. The ruler who allows himself to be guided by his heart will always be manipulated. Likewise, the man who allows himself to be guided by emotions in his relationships will always be tossed from one side to the other, reacting, explaining himself, asking for understanding. Emotional discipline is what frees you from this prison. When you stop being predictable, when you don't react as expected, when you maintain coolness amidst chaos, you automatically earn respect. A curious piece of psychology confirms this. Studies show that people who control their reactions in arguments are seen as stronger and more trustworthy, even if they're not right. Calmness creates the impression of dominance. Nervousness creates the impression of weakness. It's not the truth that matters, but the perception of control. And this perception is what defines respect. Now imagine a work meeting. A colleague unfairly accuses you of making a mistake. Everyone looks at you, expecting you to defend yourself. If you rush to justify yourself, start stuttering, show documents, try to prove your innocence, you've already lost. The image of fragility has been established. But if you wait a few seconds, take a deep breath and simply reply, "I understand your concern, but that's not exactly how it happened," and leave it at that, the impact is different. You demonstrated control, not desperation. You made it clear that you won't be thrown into the accusation's camp. Your discipline transformed the accusation into noise, and your calm into authority. Have you ever noticed how, in crisis situations, everyone instinctively seeks out the calmest person? It's almost automatic. In the midst of chaos, those who remain calm become leaders, even without a position. Emotional discipline is so rare that it stands out immediately. There's no need to prove anything. You just need to stay calm. This is why calm is often mistaken for strength, because in a world where everyone reacts, those who wait become unpredictable. But what about when the pressure is personal? When it involves feelings, pride, desire? Would you have the courage to remain silent in the face of public provocation? To remain silent when mocked? To remain cool when they try to humiliate you? This is the hardest part, because emotional discipline isn't just technical, it's also ego-driven. It's accepting being seen as indifferent, distant, even arrogant, just to preserve the power of your stance. An unlikely story demonstrates the weight of this. During a landmark trial, the defendant was repeatedly insulted by the accuser. Everyone expected him to explode, but he remained silent, staring straight ahead. The audience began to grow restless. The accuser, angered by the lack of reaction, lost control and began shouting. The defendant's silence transformed him into a respectable victim, while the accuser, who seemed to have the upper hand, became the uncontrolled aggressor. Emotional discipline changed the course of the trial. How many times in your life have you found yourself in the position of this accuser, losing control because the other person didn't react? And how many times have you been the defendant, defending yourself in vain, handing power over to your attacker? Had you remained calm, wouldn't the outcome have been different? Reaching the end of this journey is facing a mirror many avoid. You've heard about the power of silence, the power of scarcity, the allure of mystery, and emotional discipline. Each part wasn't just theory, but an invitation to see what's already present in your life from a different perspective. Because deep down you've seen these laws in action. You've noticed that those who talk too much lose strength, that those who are always available lose value, that those who explode in anger lose respect. You've observed that those who know how to keep quiet, who know how to disappear, who know how to control their emotions, are the ones who remain in our memories and hearts. The difference now is that you can no longer pretend you don't know. Knowledge has become responsibility. What remains is the decision. Will you apply it, or let it all dissolve like beautiful words? Will you continue to succumb to the instinct to explain yourself, to defend yourself, to show too much of yourself? Or will you have the courage to endure the discomfort, to carry the necessary coldness, to accept the weight of being an enigma in a world that demands transparency? This choice is the line that separates ordinary men from respected men. It's not a line drawn by wealth, beauty, or social power, but by the silent posture of those who don't need to beg. Machiavelli wrote for princes, but his words resonate with anyone seeking self-control and consequently the respect of others. The prince who seeks to be loved by all loses authority. The man who seeks approval with every gesture loses respect. The prince who maintains secrecy is feared and followed. The man who maintains silence and discipline is respected and desired. The logic is the same, only the stage has changed. Today, instead of palaces, we live in social networks, offices, relationships, and casual encounters. But human nature remains the same. You might be wondering, how can I start applying this tomorrow? The answer is simple, but it requires courage. The next time you're provoked, don't respond immediately. Breathe, count to 10, and choose silence or a short word. The next time you feel the urge to justify yourself, hold back. Ask yourself, does this explanation make me stronger or weaker? If it's weaker, keep quiet. The next time someone expects your immediate presence, delay a bit. Show that your life doesn't revolve around pleasing them. The next time you feel anger rising, don't give in. Transform it into a firm gaze, a calm posture, and a calculated silence. Every small gesture is a practice, and every practice is a brick in the construction of your aura. Have you ever noticed how the people who left the biggest impression on you were those who didn't reveal themselves completely? That the leaders you respected were the ones who maintained discipline when everyone else lost theirs? That the women you remember most about you are precisely those to whom you didn't give everything? It's no coincidence. It's the law. It's the same law Machiavelli identified centuries ago, and that continues to govern every human relationship. The difference is that now you know, and knowing changes everything. But here's the point that few have the courage to face. Living by these laws comes at a price. You'll be called cold, distant, enigmatic. Some will say you're arrogant, others that you don't care. Could you handle it? Would you endure being misunderstood for the greater respect that will come later? Would you endure losing easy approval to gain silent authority? That's the sacrifice, and it's precisely because it's expensive that respect is rare. Most don't pay this price. Most prefer crumbs of acceptance to enduring the discomfort of silence. The question is, will you be the majority or the exception? The world doesn't need more people who talk endlessly, who explain themselves without being questioned, who live in the anxiety of pleasing. The world is already saturated with them. What's missing, and what everyone seeks without knowing it, is the presence that doesn't need to impose itself. The figure whose mere presence changes the atmosphere. The man who, even in silence, is remembered. This man doesn't beg for love. He inspires respect. He doesn't chase. He attracts. He doesn't explain himself. He imposes. And if you still have doubts, look back and see how many battles you lost because you lacked emotional discipline. See how many times you were devalued because you didn't know how to be scarce. See how many times you were forgotten because you talked too much. Every mistake was a lesson, and now you have before you the opportunity to turn these lessons into practice. You don't have to change the whole world today. Just change your next move. Maintain silence. Set boundaries. Preserve mystery. Control your emotions. And watch how respect will begin to grow around you like an invisible aura. In the end, it all comes down to a choice. You can continue as you always have, reacting to every provocation, explaining yourself to every accusation, showing yourself excessively, begging for attention. Or you can choose to be different, even if it hurts at first. You can choose to be rare, to be silent, to be an enigma. You can choose to bear the discomfort now to reap respect later. This choice isn't theoretical, it's practical, and you need to make it now. If this message spoke to you, if it awakened something that was dormant, make a simple gesture. Like this video so more people have access to these truths no one dares to speak. Leave your comment, even if it's anonymous, even if it's just a point, as a silent pact that you understood. And subscribe to the channel because this was just one of the many weapons we will still explore together. The transformation doesn't end here. It has only just begun. Like, comment, subscribe. Not out of obligation, but as a commitment to yourself. Because every gesture is a declaration. You will no longer be held hostage by approval. You will not get lost in empty explanations. You will not give up the mystery that generates respect. Starting today, you can choose to be like the majority, predictable, anxious, forgettable, or you can choose to be the exception, the enigma that no one controls, but everyone respects. The decision is yours, and yours alone.